Joining us tonight, we are going to have each of the candidates for the County Board of Supervisor, but in order to maintain social distancing, we are having them come in one district at a time. So we're going to start with District 1, and we have the Republican candidate Keith Raddick and the Democrat candidate Kevin McCormick. We will give each candidate 1 minute to make an opening statement, and then we will have our panelists ask them questions. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer the same question, and we will alternate who goes first. The candidates were informed of this forum structure prior to this, but they have not seen the questions. So I would like to ask you gentlemen to make your opening statements, and we're going to start with Mr. McCormick over on the far end. So go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. My name is Kevin McCormick. I'm 42 years old. I am married and have an 8-year-old daughter. I was born and raised here in Sioux City, and I'm proud to be an Iowa native. I have strong Midwestern values rooted in working hard, doing the right thing, and being a person of integrity. I've had several careers over my lifetime. I was an auto mechanic for 9 years out of college. I owned and operated a small construction company for about 5 years. And more recently, I chose to take an early retirement after serving for about 8 years with the Sioux City Police Department as a police officer and a detective. I believe strongly in honesty and integrity. I speak truthfully from the heart, and if I tell you that I will do something, I will do it. I view this position as a loud voice for all people, all residents of Woodbury County, and if elected, I'll promise to work hard to resolve issues that are most important to you. Thank you.
And Mr. Raddick.
I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in tonight, and I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this event. I'm Keith Raddick, and most of you know me from my service to the City Council and my term of 4 years on the Board of Supervisors. Others may know me from my 15 years of work at Home Furniture as a salesman. And I'd like to point out that as a salesman, you don't make it very far if you don't have honesty and a hardworking attitude. I'm married to my wife Meredith. I have 4 kids and we have a dog, and this year we added our first grandchild. Becoming a grandpa has only made me more passionate about Woodbury County and making it the best place to live, work, and raise a family. My first priority has always been the budget and keeping tax levies down. I have proven that I can be trusted with your tax dollars. My second priority is making sure there's more affordable housing development in our communities in Woodbury County. And my third priority is economic development and making sure that we overcome the county's obstacles to development.
Thank you. And we're going to start the questions. Let's just go in order. So, Kristen, we'll start with you, and then we'll work our way down. Okay. And you can direct your first question to Mr. Raddick.
Okay. Mr. Raddick, how would you oversee the operation of the new jail to ensure the ongoing balance between facility maintenance and operations compared to other priorities in the budget?
That's a great question. The LEC, or the new jail, is mostly under the sheriff's supervision. The county supervisors are really more of a pass-through of the funds. But as a supervisor and somebody that was involved in a lot of the planning on this new facility, we ensured that from the get-go there was a sinking fund for maintenance, so that as things come up in the facility, they're going to be maintained properly, and it's not going to be what we faced the last time around. I think we've done a lot of planning on this facility, and one of the main concerns was finding sources of revenue with this new facility. So that's why we've been working with different partners along the way to ensure that, yes, we can maybe take some federal inmates, we can maybe take inmates from other counties, and that way we're getting that revenue to put money aside in the sinking fund and offset those operating costs.
And Mr. McCormick, could you answer the same question, please?
Sure. If elected, I look forward to overseeing construction of the new law enforcement center. I mentioned earlier that I've got a background in construction, and so I want to make sure that this go-around best practices are performed, common sense decisions are being made, and our hard-earned tax dollars are being spent wisely. That was a mistake that was made 30, 40 years ago with the current jail, and now here we are having to come up with $50 million in order to build a new one. I did support the jail. I do believe that we need a new jail and law enforcement center, but but it's a difficult pill to swallow.
Thank you. Teresa, if you would direct your next question to Mr. McCormick.
Mr. McCormick, if elected, what are your top 3 priorities?
So I've got 5 priorities, but the top 3 in order would be starting with mental health. Unfortunately, I was involved in an incident at work about 6 years ago, and from it I walked away with very little physical injury, but I did have some mental health concerns, and so that's near and dear to my heart. I want to do everything that I can to increase access and awareness to mental health in Siouxland. Number 2 has to do with turf wars. In my research leading up to this point, I've spoken with a lot of people, and I've determined that there seems to be some turf wars between city councils and county government, and that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think that when we're all working together, we're much stronger. We are serving, after all, the same people. And then the final one has to do with the law enforcement center. And again, if elected, I want to just oversee the law enforcement center construction to make sure that common sense decisions are being made and that best practices are being performed.
Thank you. Mr. Raddick, would you answer the same question, please?
Sure thing. Yeah, my first priority, again, has always been the budget and focusing on where we're spending our money, how we could maybe save money in the future, because the goal is to keep the tax levies as low as possible. And I've proven time and time again that I can be trusted with tax dollars in Woodbury County. I found ways to consolidate services, consolidate positions within the county. When we went to 24-hour paramedics countywide, when we lost Siouxland paramedics, we just basically shifted positions. My second priority would be affordable housing throughout the county and our communities of Woodbury County. We have a lot of new homes being built in the 350 to 500,000 range, and we have a lot of new apartment buildings being built. But we need to work with the state of Iowa and the housing tax credits to build more affordable housing. And again, my third priority is economic development, utilizing our TIF dollars better, and overcoming any obstacles to our development.
Thank you. And Ms. Adamson, would you please direct your question to Mr. Raddick?
Sure. So considering that projects regarding gravel roads could cost the county approximately $31 million over the next 5 years, in your opinion, where is the county at regarding those roads that need to be fixed? And if elected, how would you move things forward?
Sure thing. We've actually put together a plan on gravel roads, and the number we're given from our engineer was actually $10 million. And we have a plan to use TIF revenue, and we have TIF the roads and throughout the county to use that revenue for that project. Right now, that is kind of held up in a legal discussion, I'll call it. But over the last couple of years, our engineer's budget has gone up considerably. Just last year, it went from $8 million to $10 million. And you have to factor in that we lost about a $1.3 million special assessment levy to replace bridges. So for that kind of an increase over the 4 years, it's about a 25% increase. We're getting a lot more money out there to the roads, including adding 3 positions that maintain the roads. So we've been taking a lot of steps and being very proactive in the gravel road battle.
And Mr. McCormick, would you answer the same question, please?
Sure. That's actually one of my other main objectives. It's kind of broad, but it's getting out ahead of problems before they become a crisis. And I see this secondary roads issue as a crisis, something that could have been alleviated had we directed the funds towards it many, many years ago. Unfortunately, there's plenty of folks that live out in the county that are experiencing a lot of trying times just getting to and from their residences. What I'd like to see is to be sure that in the future we are, like I say, getting out ahead of problems before they erupt and get to this point. Sometimes minor fixes can turn into nightmares over time.
Thank you. And Ms. Barnes, would you please direct your next question to Mr. McCormick?
Mr. McCormick, in regard to COVID-19, what do you think the greatest challenge to the county will be in the future? For instance, what about funding for Siouxland District Health?
Yeah, so funding for Siouxland District Health is an obvious one. That's a major priority. I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be getting our small business community back on track. That's a huge issue to me. I'm familiar with running a small business, and it's difficult even during good times of the economy. And so I think, to answer your question, the biggest issue that we're going to be having moving forward is just trying to do whatever we can to try and prop up and stabilize our small business community.
And Mr. Raddick, would you answer the same question, please?
Sure thing. You know, a lot of the challenge with COVID-19 is yet to be seen. It comes this November when we start to see where our sales tax receipts are, the casino revenue, and all these numbers that we were running off projections, and seeing the actual numbers could pose a challenge. You know, we don't know where they're going to be, because we've heard anywhere from 30% less to maybe even worse. So as a county, when you budget off projections and then you get your actual numbers and there's quite a bit less, there's kind of a crisis that goes, then you start using your reserves. And he brought up a great point with the effect on small business. You know, there's a lot of restaurants hurting, so I've been trying to do my best to eat out as much as possible lately. But I think, you know, we as a community, if we work together and identify needs, that we can come together and we can be stronger through all of this in the end.
Thank you. And Ms. Weaver-Basie, would you direct your question to Mr. Raddick?
Mr. Raddick, how will you work to earn the trust of voters from the entire county?
Sure thing. You know, I've worked very hard over my time in public service. As a supervisor, I've made it to almost every single city council meeting throughout Woodbury County. I made it to a lot of rural meetings and Farm Bureau, and just meeting with rural farmers to discuss where property taxes are. You know, and I've seen a lot of the concerns that, you know, people just don't want to pay more in taxes than they have to. People would like their gravel taken care of, and I think we've been doing our best to address that. And for the most part, you know, when you talk to people out in the rural community in the county, they really want to be left alone and live their lives and not have government kind of, you know, create some new rules or regulations for everything they do in their regular life. So I've had the back of the rural community. I'm much more of a person that doesn't see that I got to get my hands in everything and control everything. I let the community and the people live their lives, and I'll take care of business at the courthouse.
Thank you. Mr. McCormick?
Yeah, so far my entire campaign has been all about serving the entire population of Woodbury County. And early on, we started making trips to the smaller communities, and we visited every single one so far. And I've spoken with several people there, and in fact, they do feel like they're neglected at times. And that's something that I hate to see. And so I just want to guarantee the voters that I'll absolutely keep everybody in mind when it comes to making decisions. I also think that it's important to meet people where they live. I like the idea of reviving the rotating board meetings, going out to these smaller communities so that people can come and speak to them and speak if they choose. And that's something that I plan on bringing up if I'm elected, to see if we can get that going again. And if not, I'll just make it a point to do it myself.
Thank you. And Ms. Adamson, will you direct your question to Mr. McCormick, please?
Mr. McCormick, Woodbury County will soon have a new jail and a new sheriff, essentially starting off with a clean slate. How do you see the relationship between the Sheriff's Department and the Board of Supervisors developing?
Well, you know, I know Chad Sheehan really, really well. He and I are friends. We've been friends for quite some time. I've worked with him. I know that he's a very good guy. He's got a big heart, and he's very intelligent. I think that it's going to be a smooth transition for him into the sheriff's office, and I think that just given what I know about him and how he works with people, I think that the relationship between the board and the sheriff's department will be a good one.
And Mr. Raddick?
And I've been meeting a lot with Chad over the last few months, getting to know him quite well. I think Chad's a great guy. He'll make a great sheriff for Woodbury County, and I'm honored to be able to serve with him if I get that chance. I think, you know, if you look at anything when you have two government, levels of government working with each other, you know, sometimes you'll be at odds, but I've always done my best to make sure that I get along with whoever I'm serving with at the end of the day. And that's my promise to Woodbury County voters, and I'll keep that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Barnes, back to you. Would you direct your next question to Mr. Raddick?
Mr. Raddick, Woodbury County is asking for a little over $1.3 million in COVID cost reimbursement from the CARES Act. How do you intend to ensure that this reimbursement money is distributed fairly among the communities in the county?
Sure. The 1.3 million, initially, like I said, we don't know what our potential costs are going to be. So initially that 1.3 million should go into our reserve funds to secure those, and that way we know, what we're going to need and where we're going to need it. And then we'll have to go through kind of department by department to see who was affected the worst by the pandemic. Some departments will be affected more than others. And it'll really be a process essentially similar to the budgeting process, and I've been through that before. And it will be equitable to the extent that it can be. Some departments probably saw very little effect from COVID, and some maybe are doing better than they were before. But, obviously the Sheriff's Department and District Health and a few others had a few more expenses or costs come up because of COVID.
Thank you. Mr. McCormick?
Yeah, and I think that Mr. Raddick's correct in what he says. Unfortunately with COVID, there are a lot of question marks. There are a lot of unknowns, and so it's going to be difficult to determine who needs what and how much. I do think that health and safety are probably the two biggest priorities, and so certainly, like he had mentioned, the Sheriff's Department and Siouxland District Health. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of ensuring that we've got open dialogue with all of the communities and agencies that we have in Woodbury County, and making sure that everybody's taken into account when the money starts to get distributed.
Thank you. Ms. Weaver-Bakesy, would you direct your next question to Mr. McCormick?
Mr. McCormick, have you ever attended a poverty simulation workshop or diversity training? And would you consider asking that such trainings be held for the supervisors and other county employees? Please explain.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. This one's kind of an interesting one for me because early on in my life, when I was 4 years old, my parents split up. My mom moved to Corpus Christi, Texas, and she struggled to make ends meet down there. I would go down every summer for 6 weeks, and we were living in poverty. We lived in Section 8 housing. We waited for food stamps to show up to put food in the refrigerator. It wasn't for the entire time, but it certainly was a good portion of my childhood. And so I've experienced it myself, and I'm very empathetic to folks that find themselves in those situations. To answer your question, I absolutely think that training would be awesome for county workers, anybody that's interested in learning what it's like to be impoverished. It's not a fun time.
Thank you. Mr. Raddick?
Well, and I can go back to the 80s when I was a child, and my family took on the family farm, and in a time where it was almost considered child abuse to take on the family farm. And my dad lost his full-time job, so he was laid off for over a year. And we were actually kind of helped by the generosity of a lot of the other farmers in the area. Some of our meals at times were popcorn that was from the field, and we had a lot of frozen corn and a lot of frozen peas. And as a kid, honestly, I didn't realize, I thought that was just normal life, I thought popcorn was a pretty good supper. But, I can relate to a lot of people. I've had a lot of, minimum wage jobs in my life. A lot of times I've had to rely on friends. Obviously I've always worked hard and done the best I could to get to places where I can be. As far as the county, our HR department has had training in the past. It was through a computer type course. So.
Thank you. And Ms. Adamson, I think we have time for one more quick question before we have closing statements. So go ahead and direct your question to Mr. Raddick.
For sure. Mr. Raddick, do you feel the county has done enough regarding COVID health protocols county-wide? And if not, is there anything more that they could do?
Yeah, I honestly think that the county's done, quite a bit as far as shoring up the building itself and, making sure that, temperatures were taken for a while. If anything, while people were not out and about, we were kind of over and above what a lot of other places were doing. And, as far as restrictions out in the county, I mean, what are we going to do? Tell guys in tractors they got to wear masks? No, it's, people have a right to live the way they want to live. And, if somebody wants to, live life without a mask, I'll defend that right. If somebody wants to wear their mask, I'll defend their right to wear their mask as well. And, that's what America's about. It's about freedom and choices. And, I feel like the counties took a very balanced approach to COVID-19.
And Mr. McCormick?
I think about this, and one of the things that I've done to kind of prepare myself for potentially being elected to this position is having gone back and watched, the last 6 months of board meetings. And one thing that kind of struck me early on that I was trying was that they weren't wearing any masks up on stage behind their podiums up there. And I think that, to me, I think in order to slow the spread, to stop the spread, wearing a mask is a simple thing to do. I agree with Mr. Radig wholeheartedly that everybody's free to decide what they want to do, but I think that it might have been advantageous from a leadership perspective to maybe be wearing masks while attending the board meetings, just to show that we're supporting the cause and trying to slow the spread a little bit.
Thank you. We will now allow each candidate to make a 1-minute closing statement. And Mr. Raddick, since we started with Mr. McCormick last time, we'll start with you this time.
Sounds great. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning into this forum. I would also like to thank the voters that have trusted me to serve you over the last 4 years. Again, priority number 1 will always be the budget and keeping tax levies down. Number 2, I'd like to encourage affordable housing development throughout our bedroom communities in Woodbury County. Finally, I'll continue to make economic development a priority. See, Woodbury County has a lot of challenges to development, and we need to identify those challenges and overcome them. And speaking of challenges, we faced a lot of challenges over the last 4 years, from mental health mandates, flooding in Hornick, loss of paramedic services, a failing jail, and a COVID-19 pandemic. We overcame these challenges and continue to overcome these challenges by working together. I can proudly say that as supervisor, Woodbury County is better off now than what it was 4 years ago. And as your supervisor, I have kept my promises, and I would like to continue fighting for you, the taxpayer, and I ask for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. McCormick?
When it comes to the county supervisor position, many people will argue that there is no greater level of government that has a greater impact on our daily lives, the type of community that we live in, the type of community that we leave our children. And that's why it's so important to choose the right person for the job. You want someone focused, I think, number 1, on constituent service. That is somebody who will actively solicit information, input from the constituents that are important to them, and then actively take steps to resolve those issues. You also want someone who shares your same values like honesty, integrity, and work ethic, some of my core values. As county supervisor, I can guarantee you that you will be at the heart of every decision that I make. If elected, I promise to do everything that I can to make Woodbury County an even better place to live, work, play, and stay. I ask for your vote this November. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you both for attending this evening. We appreciate your willingness to serve our county and our citizens, and we appreciate your participation in this forum this evening. So thank you both very much. We will have a brief intermission here of sorts as we switch over so that we can have the candidates for District 3. They will be coming into the studio and taking their places as these gentlemen are leaving. So we ask you to bear with us for just a few minutes.
You guys were very good.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That felt like I looked like I looked a lot fatter.